What's up, yo? Welcome to Your One Life. I'm your host, Kim Young Kim, and I'm super glad to have you as a listener today. If you're new to this podcast, here's what it's all about. This podcast is about teaching you from the greatest minds in the world, assisting you in all aspects of your life, and helping you get out of awkward conversations by being even more awkward than the other person. I see your conspiracy theories, and I raise you how attractive I think your mother is. Now, today we have a great guest. I'm super pumped to have him as my first guest on this podcast. Author of 2 books, The 2-Hour Job Search and The Job Closer, Mr. Steve Dalton. I hope you enjoy this conversation that I had with him. I found it very enlightening and also a lot of fun. All right, so I have Mr. Steve Dalton, the author of The 2-Hour Job Search and The Job Closer. Steve, how is your day going, my man?
It's been great. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. How you been?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Thanks so much. All right, so let me give you a proper introduction real quick. And I have a question. Is this thing on? Because I'm rocking with Steve Dalton, and he's dropping knowledge bombs to shake up your life and wake up your inner dreamer and help you to see that some fields have grass that's greener. And when it comes to work, he'll help you on your search with 2 books and 1 purpose for you to find your way, with a lamp to light your path to where you want to go. Because job hunting's an enigma, but he's known to crack the code for you to cycle through a harvest, so call him a sound garden. Because he's keeping your resumes out of black holes, son. We're talking to Steve Dalton. Because he came to wash away the pain and assist you to a new start and a new level so you can catch wins like the Duke Blue Devils. Call him Coach K as he's leading you to victory, balling out for days, living an alternate history. So beat the competition and heed his advice. And like North Carolina, you'll be first in flight.
Nice. Excellent. That is the best introduction I've ever gotten. Thank you.
Thank you for being on this podcast. I am super pumped to have you. Oh man, this is great. It's happening. All right. Very good. So I have read your book. I've gleaned so much wisdom from your book. And we are here to talk about your first book, which is The 2-Hour Job Search. Can you just tell the people why you wrote this amazing book and, your kind of quick journey to it?
Yeah, origin story. So I became a career coach helping international students. Mm-hmm. I saw that they were, especially and this was during the 2008 financial crisis, I saw that they were really struggling to make progress. Not only was the economy terrible, mm-hmm. but they were also struggling to adapt to a new culture and sometimes in a second or third or fifth language, trying to do the same tasks that domestic students were. And I realized that instructions were much more effective they were much more inclusive and equitable for helping people make progress quickly. YouTube was just huge in popularity at that point. There was a YouTube for everything if you didn't know how to fix a particular electronic that you had or something like that. But there were no instructions for the job search. And when I looked in bookstores to find a set of instructions, nobody had done it. So I realized I'm as qualified as anyone to take a hack at it. Former chemical engineer and strategy consultant. We learned to break big problems into small pieces. The process ended up helping my students. I hated that it would only help the students who could afford an MBA that happened to choose Duke. And I wanted it to be anyone with a library card to be able to access it. So that's the origin story for why the 2-Hour Job Search hit shelves thanks to Penguin Random House.
Yes, indeed. And like I said, it's packed full of great information. I'm really pumped to share about it. And I think I heard you say on a previous podcast you were on that your best success story was someone found a job within a month. Is that correct?
I've had people succeed with the 2-Hour Job Search within a week.
So,
sent their first email on a Monday, an informational meeting on Wednesday led to an interview on Thursday, which led to an offer on Friday. Not a typical result. Sure. Please don't expect to find a job in a week using the 2-Hour Job Search. For most people, if you follow the recipe as designed, it is a recipe. So Just like with baking, if you leave out the yeast or you add flour in the wrong amount at the wrong time, the cake doesn't turn out. If you follow it exactly, most people will be done within 1 to 2 months.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So 1 to 2 months is very soon, considering that I know people who have been on the job hunt for 6 to 12 months. So with that being said, what is actually happening to these people's applications, and what is happening to what they're submitting?
I mean, nobody knows. That's the funny thing about online job postings. Everybody has strong opinions in this industry about how to beat ATS systems, but there's no data that supports any of it. To me, online job postings can't be beaten. Job seeker AI will never keep up with employer AI. They don't have incentives to be right. They have incentives to be fast. They don't need a perfect hire slowly. They need a good enough hire quickly. That's always their incentive. If there's somebody who's done this job before, but somewhere else, that person's always going to cut the line and get a shot before anyone else. But even in this market, not even all those people get a shot. So when you apply online, you simply never know that you'll even get a response. Even a rejection is a nice thing when they acknowledge that you even tried. But those applications take time and effort and energy and shreds of your soul. And those are all finite resources. You can't give them away freely. The 2-hour job search.
My soul is actually infinite, but yeah.
Excellent. It's got its own gravity. So online job postings simply can't be beaten. It's like trying to build a nest egg for your family by buying lottery tickets. It's just not predictable, but there's definite losses, but uncertain upside of ever hitting a jackpot.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's just got to be a better alternative. And what I teach in the 2-hour job search is that better alternative. It's the least bad option available to job seekers. It doesn't feel perfect, but it is the least bad option with the highest amount of return per hour of effort invested.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's the shortcut, the cheat code, whatever you want to call it. And speaking of which, as we're thinking about getting ourselves together and putting, ourselves out there, quote unquote, you talk about resumes, you talk about LinkedIn. How much time should people spend on both of those things in, their search?
So I was at Fuqua in the Career Center, the business school at Duke, for 17 years. My boss for most of those years was a guy named Ed, and he has this great rule. He says, imagine your job search is going to take you 100 hours. I want you spending no more than 3 of them on your resume. And I love the way he puts that. I call it Ed's 3-hour rule. There is no way to guarantee you get found. Nobody agrees on what a perfect resume looks like. People spend thousands of dollars to try to get a resume to perfect, and that illusion lasts up until you show your resume to literally anyone else, because everyone has an opinion on it. No one agrees on what a perfect resume looks like. People more or less agree on what a good enough resume looks like, the 80% resume. So that's what I advise job seekers to strive for. When human beings actually look at your resume, they typically already like you. You've done the legwork to get someone to pay attention to you, but a casual observer is usually looking at the things you can't change. Where you went to school, what companies you worked for, what job titles you had, what your dates of employment were. The Ladders did this great study where they found that on average, human beings spent 6 seconds reviewing a resume, but they hooked their eyes up to eye tracking software and found 80% of their attention was on things that job seekers can't change. We're not stressed about how to represent our school or our companies. We're stressed about the bullet points.
Right.
Like that's where all the time gets poured and nobody's really paying attention to it. So resumes are a bad gamble.
Sure.
Bad
Absolutely.
investment.
Yeah. And what about LinkedIn? Same thing or?
Similar. I think the LinkedIn, look at that as being a more user-friendly version of your resume. You have to have your biographical information on there perfectly without errors. But beyond that, you don't really need to worry about those bullet points. Make it exactly the same as your resume if you want. But typically the reason we like LinkedIn so much better than resumes is it is an abridged, condensed version of your resume. It's just the biographical information that we want anyway in an easy to review format. So invest in the professional headshot. Put your biographical information in there correctly. But after 3 hours between your resume and LinkedIn, don't worry about it anymore. It's not going to move the needle. What moves the needle is getting strangers to advocate for you at companies that you want to work for.
Yes. And turning contacts into colleagues.
Absolutely.
I've heard that somewhere. I can't remember where.
Might be the name of my company. Thank you for the name drop of
Yes,
contact
sir.
a colleague.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very cool. So as we talk about good uses of time, what are some common bad uses of time that you see besides, spending countless hours on resume, countless hours on hours, money, all that stuff? What else is a bad use of time that is a very common practice?
I would say the bad use of time is what I would call it the defensive job search, where you job search for stats. And the way, like if a loved one asks you how your job search is going, most people will default to two metrics that don't correlate with success: the number of applications they've submitted and the number of hours they've spent. Neither of those things correlate, but it gives us the one source of positive affirmation that we get in the job search prior to being successful. We get that, we know you're doing your best, honey, from our support network. And it's awful that means so much, but the job search is so soul crushing when you are constantly being ignored, constantly being rejected, that feels like an oasis. How can you give that up by spending fewer hours or not applying to the best of your ability? I think being an effective job seeker is not just about moving away from job searching for stats, that defensive job search. There are three metrics that I think positively correlate with job search success, and that is the number of outreach emails sent to strangers who work in your field of choice in your job function. The second one would be the number of informationals you conduct, informational meetings or informational interviews. And the third would be the number of referrals you get to another human being as a result of one of those informationals, what I call a second-degree referral. That new person doesn't know you as a stranger like the first person did. They know you as a friend of the first person. So it's not just about pursuing better metrics. It's also about retraining your support network to positively reinforce healthier metrics instead of the unhealthy ones.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And, the big thing is naturalizing people, right? And I love that analogy, naturalize. I'm like, yeah, I have actually been naturalized, so I know exactly how this works. So, you want to explain naturalization and how you get to people to become citizens of your country, quote unquote?
So naturalization is a process where in the political sense is where non-citizens become citizens of a new country. Naturalizing in the job search context is about turning strangers into advocates or contacts into colleagues. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of job seekers feel at a disadvantage because their network is not relevant for the job search they're doing. Sure. The good news is that's 99% of job seekers. Like, we almost all don't have a relevant network. And the ones that do, it's often more trouble than it's worth. I've heard countless stories of like college roommates working at a company somebody wants to work at, and the college roommate just doesn't really ever prioritize the friend's job search because they're in a different function. They haven't talked in 20 years. Like, it's hard to change the urgency of existing contacts. It's much easier to establish an urgent relationship with a brand new contact. But that's a skill like riding a bike or learning to swim. You don't learn it just naturally by aging. You have to be taught how to do it. And the 2-hour job search is exact instructions for that really scary process of naturalizing total strangers who work in your job function of choice into advocates for you to get interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to keep talking about reaching out to strangers. But first, I feel like I need to maybe tell you what I know about the lamp list.
Okay, please.
The lamp list. The lamp list is a thing you make, and you have to go create a list of places that you want to work at in your life. You need advocates, and they come through, and they will say something for you. But check your motivation, 'cause that is oh so key. Check the postings, you go Indeed, and yo, I come through and I see a job and then I apply, but first I reach out quick. How was that? How was that?
That was great. That was. I've
you.
never heard lamp taught that way before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the lamp list. So, like, I want to go through each one of these because, that all sounds like probably Greek to people who are listening. So let's start with the L, right?
Yeah.
The L is list. What do I need on my list?
It's your list of employers. I watch a lot of reality TV. One show I don't watch a lot of because I'm very sensitive to cringe. But but I'm very familiar with the show is The Bachelor. And what I've learned from understanding The Bachelor is that it's much better to be, The Bachelor rather than one of 25 contestants over and over. Somehow The Bachelor always seems to win, and as does The Bachelorette on the gender flipped equivalent of it.
Sure.
But job seekers who approach their search by focusing on online job postings, they treat it like one of the 25 contestants over and over and over again. And that takes a toll on your confidence. You've got to treat it like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. The best way to do that is to get out of that artificial desperation, is what I call it. You're choosing bad circumstances. The best way to get out of that is expand your consideration set. Mm-hmm. So we need to brainstorm a minimum of 40 employers to do that. I've tried lower numbers and higher numbers. 40 is the minimum that is required to get people out of the unhealthy mindset that they need companies to work out. In reality, companies are infinitely replaceable. There's way more of them than there are of you. Sure. So I teach 4 different brainstorming methods. I recommend spending 10 minutes on each method to come up with that minimum of 40 employers.
Yeah, and those methods are fantastic. All right, so we got the L. Next, we were talking about A, advocacy. Let's just break it down real quick. What is advocacy?
It is a quick 10-minute survey of your 40 employers or more that quickly gives you an indication of the likelihood of finding a sympathetic contact, plus this organization's familiarity with people from your background and their willingness to pay enough to get you to work there. So it's a simple yes or no switch. You look up each one of those 40 companies in your most recent alumni database. I recommend LinkedIn. It's got more current information. And it's simply a yes or a no. So these columns are not meant to mean that person that you find is going to be your contact. They might work in a totally different job function. And job function similarity is very important. It just lets you know the company's familiar with your school's brand or hiring transitioning military veterans. If you choose to swap that in for your most recent school in your A column. But it really is about the likelihood of finding an advocate and basically how greased are the wheels for you to be considered by this company.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So that's advocacy, motivation. We need that motivation. So motivate us about motivation and why it's so important.
Absolutely. It's the end. Your willingness to get ignored by strangers, but keep trying is the engine that drives this process forward.
Right.
So you have to start with organizations where it doesn't matter if the first 3 or 4 people ignore you that you reach out to, you're going to try a 4th or a 5th. So just gut feeling only. I want everybody to come up with a blended average of how strongly they feel about this company. How motivated are they to keep trying if they get ignored? And it's just a 3, 2, or 1 based on that rating. And you save zeros for companies you don't know enough about right now to have an opinion. Don't stop what you're doing and research them elsewhere. For a host of scientific reasons, that's not productive.
Yeah, and I love how you give really good instructions about you're going to get tempted to do this. Don't do this because it will lead you down a spiral. And next thing you know, 3 hours later, you poked around, and it's kind of like me and my Wikipedia spirals, right?
Oh gosh, yeah. When you know that reaching out to strangers, which a lot of us equate as being something super uncomfortable, even though in the 2-hour job search you learn an approach that's way less uncomfortable. It's almost pleasant. But when you know that contacting strangers, something you probably have a gut aversion towards, is next, you will find ways to procrastinate. And researching companies as you go is a big one.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and let's talk about the P for posting. We see a little something, right? What do we do?
Each of these columns is a proxy for perfect information. Perfect information takes a long time to find and doesn't really exist anyway. So they're proxies for perfect information. Perfect information in the A column would be there's someone there who will advocate for you. Perfect information in the motivation column is which companies are you most energized by. That one's a pretty good reflection. The posting column is an approximation of urgency. Mm-hmm. So rate each company by how relevant their current job postings are that you see in, I like LinkedIn Jobs now a little bit better than Indeed.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. But if they've got very relevant postings, it's a 3, somewhat relevant 2, not so relevant 1. And what you can glean from a score of 3 is that they're hearing from job seekers just like you right now, this company that you like. So if you want to get an interview with them, you've got to move now. So it approximates urgency.
Right. Absolutely. So if you see that perfect job, posting, you gotta, but don't hit up everybody in the company, right?
Nope.
That's the advice you give in the book. So that's very important. But
don't even race to apply, because we already know the online job posting is a black hole. I recommend something called the 5% rule if you're feeling nervous about this. Pay attention to the applications you've done. A lot of people keep spreadsheets. I think that's an unhealthy practice, but a lot of people have them. If you have them, see if your response rate from online applications is greater than 5%. If so, go ahead and apply first, network second. But if not, most people are in the not category where they're not hearing back 5% of the time.
Right.
So recognize that those postings take time and effort and energy. That same amount of time, effort, and energy goes much further attempting network. Even if most of that time is getting ignored, the handful of people that speak to you become exponentially helpful. They can open up entire networks of other people. They're your eyes and ears in that space now, but you're just going to have to kiss a lot of frogs to find your princes in the process.
Yeah. And well, what's funny is you could apply to a job you had no interest in, you're overqualified for, and they will, nope.
Yeah. And people are worried about the postings going away, but what are you really missing out on if you're not hitting 5%? Like, oh, you've just saved yourself time because you can't apply to this job. Exceptions are made for referral candidates all the time. So if they have a human being likes you inside the company, they will make exceptions for that person until the job is officially closed. So that's really the attitude to take towards this. It's actually doing you a favor when the posting disappears in most cases.
Yeah. You need that warm intro in because it's a 12-to-1 ratio, right? The jobs that get the warm.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It's wild. All right. So I want to tell you what I know about the 6-point email, which is what we do once we find someone perhaps that we want to reach out to, right? Okay. And then you just tell me how right I am. Okay, so you gotta make it 7,500 words, or roughly, or more, something like that.
Give or take, 74-25 words. So 75 words is the goal.
Okay, 75. And why 75 words?
Shorter emails allow shorter responses. The longer your outreach email, the harder your sending an email becomes. The more formulaic it appears. And the less likely a reader's going to read it. I don't know about you. I don't like reading emails about strangers that I didn't ask to contact me. I'd much rather read an email about myself. Right. And if the email's not about me, then I want it to be short. So short emails maximize the likelihood of engagement and minimize the duration of a response. You send me a 75-word email, I can send you a 5-word response back. Right. If I'm sympathetic, but you send me a 300-word email, I'm not going to respond until I have a time to do so in a way that's not going to appear rude or curt.
Sure. Yeah. So you're saying don't make it about yourself?
Nope. Oh. Got to reduce the... Yeah, absolutely. We got to make it at least half about the reader. So 50-50, that's one of the other points. So over at least half the word count should be about the reader, not the sender.
Okay. I don't like that advice, but I'll take it. You're the expert. Okay. So then once you reach out to them in your email, you should ask for their firstborn, right?
Ask a question, maybe not for their firstborn, but generally make your ask in the form of a question, and your ask is their time and knowledge. Not help with your job search. That goes unstated. Another point is ask about insight and knowledge, not job leads.
Yeah, absolutely. But
make your ask in the form of a question ending in a question mark. It's easier to understand what the request is when we see question marks versus periods.
Absolutely. And why is it that questions are so important as far as when you make those requests?
It demonstrates more confidence on the part of the sender. A lot of people who are less confident in their job search will be more passive. They'll say things like, I was wondering if you had some time to chat about your experience at your company. Not terrible, but that ends in a period. I'd much rather someone ask directly, do you have some time to chat about your experience at your company? Question mark. I know, okay, that is a question that I should respond to. We're just conditioned by, our entire lives of training from reading that question marks mean a response is expected. A bunch of periods, and we don't know what the call to action is as clearly. It's better professional writing.
Right. All right. And then when you reach out to them, one of the first things you're supposed to do is state your greatness, right? Stating greatness?
Stating connections. Let's try that. If you have a connection to the person, state it. If not, you skip this one.
Okay. Well, secretly, I will say my greatness in my own way. Okay.
Yeah, those are inside thoughts. Yeah. Just like talking about yourself in the email, like half the word count should be about the reader. Like you can fill in all those words in your head. They don't need to see it. We want to entice them and quickly sample the market. Most people are going to ignore you. The response rate on this email was about 20 to 40% pre-COVID. Now it's about 10 to 20%. But the good news is that the people who stopped responding weren't going to be helpful anyway. They're a group I call obligates. They only act out of a sense of obligation. That sense of obligation has dropped since COVID, and we're all kind of in recovery mode and not doing things that our heart's not into. So short emails are just easier and less effort for job seekers.
Okay, so I'm 0 for 5. Let's see if I can get number 6 right. Define interest narrowly and broadly.
Yes, that's a winner. Yes, nailed it.
Right.
Nailed it.
Okay.
So
what is that?
Yeah, in layman's terms, that means that you want to tell them without telling them who else you're also reaching out to. So if you just say, I want to talk to you about your experience at Waymo, but you don't provide any context, they are going to assume that you probably saw a job posting and now you're like rage networking just to try to get an in. If you tell them, do you have some time to chat about your experience at Waymo, your insights would be greatly appreciated because I'm trying to learn more about product management in the autonomous vehicle space. Now they know to take you a little more seriously. You have a vision. You've probably talked to somebody at Tesla, Lucid Motors, Argo AI. Like you've given them a genre of company that is coherent and makes sense, and that makes you a more credible candidate. That increases the odds they're going to take you up on that conversation.
Good. So let's say obligates, right? There's obligates. There's curmudgeons who they're not going to answer anyways. Is what you say. And then there's boosters. So as we're reaching out and we're getting that 10 to 20%, I guess we have less obligates coming. So that's good news, right?
Yes.
But some obligates might respond.
Yeah.
And when they do, how can we tell the difference between like an obligate and a booster?
Well, the beautiful thing about the recipe of the 2-hour job search is that you treat everyone exactly the same. If you have a hunch that they're an obligate, the process is still identical, as if they are potentially get the sense that they're a rabid booster, someone who's like stridently in your corner. It's still the same process. So there's no additional complexity. You just keep treating them as if they are a booster until they are not cooperative, meaning they don't respond to your email. They don't respond in a timely fashion to your email. They give you vague good guidance instead of specific guidance for what to do next. So you give people the benefit of the doubt until they give you a clear sign of non-engagement, and then you move on from them to try to find somebody else.
Right. But when it feels like you're kind of dragging them along.
Yes, cut bait. Yeah. And not even cut bait. It doesn't mean drop this person or like, get a voodoo doll or anything like that. It just means hedge your bets. This person seems like they don't want to be interacting with you. They don't want to advocate for you. So keep trying. If they set up a call with you and have to postpone a couple times and you're like, I don't think this person really wants to be here, keep rescheduling that call, but also start outreach to a different person at that same company in parallel.
Yeah, right. And that you're talking about your follow-up method, which I think is brilliant. I think it's best to see it visually. So you don't have to explain it all. But like, why is it important to have a specific follow-up schedule and just having something on the calendar where you must do so?
Yes. So I teach something called the 3B7 routine. It is rooted in the science of temporal construal theory. So construal theory is decision-making theory. Temporal has to do with time. The body of research in this space demonstrates that people make higher order decisions in advance of a decision point than they do in the heat of the moment. So if I'm planning a vacation for next year, I'm going to think about things like what's going to make for an unforgettable experience that's going to make me come home relaxed, but with great stories to tell. Sure. If I were to plan that same vacation 3 weeks in advance, I'd be thinking, where can I get a hotel that's affordable? Right. You're thinking in much more practical, kind of lower order terms. So similarly, you're thinking higher order at the time you send an email about when to follow up. You're thinking clearly. After you've been ignored for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, now you're not thinking as clearly. Oh, should I follow up today? Oh, that'll be awkward. I'll just wait till tomorrow. Maybe they'll get back to me tomorrow. So pick a rule in advance when you're thinking clearly and stick to it. So 3B7 is what I teach. So anytime you email somebody, set 2 reminders on them, one for 3 business days later, one for 7 business days later. 3 business days, if they haven't responded to you yet, probably not a booster. Hedge your bets, try somebody else. If they have gotten back to you, then you don't have to suspend additional outreach to additional people at that company until that person gives you a reason to believe they're an obligate. 7 business day, that's your signal to follow up on this person, so they can't blame you for being a flighty millennial who doesn't follow through on things, or a flighty Gen Zer. Sure. Like if you reach out once, follow up once, and then you ghost, they can't blame you for that. But if you try once and disappear, it's easy for them to blame you for not following through on what you want.
Right. And I wish I was implementing the system when I was doing my outreaches for podcast guests. I had people that are literally, it's been a month, and I'm just like, oh, it's so weird to reach out now. And I'm like, oh, what do I do? Well, we'll just wait another week.
Yeah, exactly. It makes an infinite process seem finite, which is much more easy to wrap your head around. And you have weekends off using 3B7. It's all business days. There's a lot of benefits to just picking. You don't even think of these people as people when you email them. You think of them as lottery tickets with 10 to 20% odds of success. So when you're reaching out to people at volume, I'd recommend reaching out to 6 companies simultaneously using this algorithm, essentially this 3B7 algorithm. But you email them and forget about them. The only time you think about their name again is when they get back to you, or when their 7 business day reminder pops up and it's time to send them a follow-up message, which is basically identical to the first one you sent, but through a different channel.
Right. Yeah. It's a great system. Sorry, my headphones are falling off. All right. So we got our obligates and we got our boosters, right? We got our boosters who say, hey, yes, I will talk to you. And you're just like, I got a golden ticket, So once you get there, you have a whole system, right, called the TR method, which allows you to, ask questions that will get you in with them and also get information because it's an informational interview. So the TR method, let me see if I can do the TR method real quick. Let me see. Well, I'm talking about some trends up in they biz, a bunch of insights in what they do. I'm just talking about their job, talking about them things that we see, and we ask for advice. We ask what they do in our life. If they were us and I ride. I'm talking about resources. What is the next recourse? And I'm talking about assignments when I find. All right.
Nice. Nailed it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we're done. That's a wrap, I think.
No, sir. I have more questions. No. Okay, so we got the TR method to make you the belle of the ball, right? To make job seekers the belle of the ball. So what we got?
Let me jump in if I could. The TR method it's an acronym. Everything's an acronym because I'm a former strategy consultant. I can't help myself, but it is a systematic algorithm for intimacy building in a professional sense with a stranger. That is what we are trying to do. There's no single question if the informational were just one question long, there's no question you could ask that would predictably convert a stranger into an advocate. That's too big a leap for a single question to accomplish. Sure. So Tiara recognizes that there is a life cycle. There's a customer journey from my marketing days that a stranger needs to go on to feel sufficient trust and likability with you to put their own social capital at risk to recommend you to a colleague.
Right.
So that's really what it's about. You can't get there in one question. You can get there in 5. Actually in 4 these days, because it is a living recipe, the 2-hour job search. So the final A in Tiara is no longer necessary thanks to AI. We can get that information elsewhere now.
Yeah, right. And the question resources, how do you know you struck gold when you ask for resources, right?
Yeah. So, trend and insights largely portray a contact as a subject matter expert. So that it primes creativity so that when you ask them for advice, you're likely to get meaningful advice. If you start off the interview asking for advice, research shows that creativity can be primed. If you don't prime it before asking a question that requires creativity, you'll get a mediocre answer, like just keep doing what you're doing. But those 3 things, trends, insights, and advice, have to happen in order before you get to the ask of the conversation, which is the resources question. What resources do you recommend I look into next? That word resources is vague very much on purpose, because what we're hoping for, it's a referral. to another human being, not like go apply online and put my name down in your application. That's also called a referral, but it's not helpful. It's just a facilitation into a black hole. In most cases, 80% of the time, people will say, what sort of resources are you looking for? Which to me is the universal signal they're not going to give you a human being's name today. Sure. So I would ask for literal sources of information. What daily or weekly newsletters do you find most helpful to stay up to speed on your space? But in 20% of cases, people do volunteer helpful contacts live during the conversation. We just don't want to put them on the spot to ask them who you should speak to next, because this was supposed to be about information and knowledge. In your email, that's what you said this was about. It feels like a bait and switch when you suddenly switch them from knowledge to who should I talk to next. It makes it feel like it was a hit, like this was the plan all along. So you need to honor your word. Nobody who was going to give you a name during the conversation itself will refuse to give it to you a week later. For me, you're just giving them a nice way to save face if they're not feeling comfortable or want to think about who to connect you with or how they're feeling about you and whether they're willing to incur that risk. So allowing them a face-saving way to decline to give you a referral, to me, the resources question gives them exactly that.
Right, absolutely. And I love how you're showing the job seekers how to build trust. Because at the end of the day, that's what we need in order to get hired, but also, to succeed in life in general, right?
There are tons of credible people out there, especially in this like constant layoff environment that I think the world is moving to in a permanent way. Like it will always be layoffs going forward, and it will, even if you're a top performer, if the company thinks they'll be more profitable without you, you'll be cut. So I think recognizing it's really tough as a job seeker to compete on qualifications and effectiveness of the job. They can't view how you're going to be on the job. What you can compete on is your ability to solve what I call universal round one. Like every company you've ever wanted to work for has agreed to standardize their interviews. Isn't that great? Sure. And good news, it's already started. You have access to it immediately. But universal round one is basically find someone who works in your job function at that company and get them to recommend you to a colleague. It's not fun. It's hard. And you've never been trained to do it. So don't feel bad if this feels like a daunting task. The 2-hour job search gives exact instructions for it. But that is ultimately the most effective way to get an interview, which is the key bottleneck for most job seekers. Most job seekers don't struggle with it passing round one interviews. The real bottleneck is getting the round one interview in the first place.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then the cool thing about it is when they pass your name along, they can possibly become a super booster. Can you explain super boosters? Because I read the word and I was like, this is exciting. And it was exciting.
So a lot of people think like if they hear from a company, I'm sorry, we've got a hiring freeze, or we just laid people off. We're happy to talk, but just know this about the environment we're in. A lot of people would be tempted to not schedule the informational meeting. I recommend going the other way. Definitely schedule the informational meeting. If this person likes you, let's say their company was an option. Their company was hiring. If this person likes you, you might get one interview out of it with that company. Sure. If they don't like you, though, what they can do is farm you out to multiple other companies so they can be exponentially helpful. They can give you multiple contacts, companies you didn't know existed or didn't know were on a growth trajectory. They know that stuff. You only get that information by talking to human beings. So if someone says their own company's not an option, but they're happy to talk, always take that call, because you can get, when I mentioned like that Monday to Friday, the person who found a job in a week, it came because their first informational on Wednesday, that person had multiple friends who had their own companies. So there were 2 informationals on Thursday, one of which became the offer.
So it's equivalent to like going on a date and then the person saying, hey, I'm not interested in you, but here's 10 of my friends to go.
Exactly right. Yeah. Why don't you come to this party where all of my friends are going to be? Yeah. It's basically that.
Glorious. Yeah. One could only hope.
Yes. Yep.
All right. So we've covered a lot of ground and I feel like, we've gotten a good gist of things. I would have to say that listening to a podcast about this book, as I've read the book, right, and I've listened to the book on audiobook format, is not enough. And Steve is not sending me Bitcoin. I really do believe that in order to make this work, you have to pick up the book and you actually have to follow the exact steps in the book. There's no other way around it. So listen to the podcast, but please pick up the book too. So with that being said, let's say, for example, you are applying to these jobs, but you don't have the qualifications for the jobs. We all have dreams that we're not ready for yet. Not to sit here and say we'll never be ready, but let's say, for example, you have something that you want, but you don't have the resume, the portfolio, the whatever it is, but you got the potential, right?
Yeah.
What do you do?
So many people talk themselves out of jobs that they really want because they feel they lack experience, but there's no other way to get the experience.
Sure.
My recommendation is always have someone who works in that field tell you what experience you need to get. Don't make assumptions on the outside. I've seen people get entire graduate degrees that they didn't need at great cost and lifelong debt in many cases. The alternative is so much easier, cheaper, more fun. You learn stuff. Yeah. And it's just find somebody who's done the thing you want to do, who's doing the thing right now, and ask them how they did it. It's a life skill. It's not just what I teach in the 2-hour job search. I do a variant of the 2-hour job search for companies because companies are really struggling with getting people to do more than just like what's in their job description. Like basically the networking that is required, the FaceTime with peers that are not their direct boss that is required to retain your job when there are layoffs and to get promoted at the head of your class. So companies will bring me in, teach my people how to form relationships with strangers who are not expecting to hear from them. It's the same skill. So even if you get a job through on-campus recruiting at your school right now, you might probably get laid off at some point, or you'll probably be in a job you don't like, and you'll need to find that job when there's no campus interview infrastructure provided to you. The earlier you learn this skill of how to reach out to a stranger and convert them into a colleague, the more joy you'll get out of life. It's how you'll get promoted. It's how you'll keep your job. It's how you get full-time offers from your internships. It's how, to some extent, you make friends. It's just asking people good questions and then engaging meaningfully with their answers. So it really is life skills. I wish every school had a listening class like it has a speech class, but that's not the world we live in. And to me, I consider this listening training what I teach.
Yeah, indeed. And essentially, it sounds like you're telling people to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
it's temporary. It is a temporary discomfort. Yeah. Like riding a bike or learning to swim, it's temporarily uncomfortable. But once you learn it, like it brings you, both of those activities bring you great joy. I take great joy in getting strangers to open up and realizing how formulaic and systematic it is and how much I can tweak, how much the intuition also helps improve on that recipe. Like even though there's exact rules, I'm getting better and better at filling in the gaps between the rules to better engage based on intuition and experience. So you'll take pleasure in being able to get real, meaningful knowledge where people are like, wow, you learned a lot from me today. Like there is joy in that, but it's a skill you only have to learn once. Once you've done 3 informationals, you won't need me again. You won't need my book. Maybe you'll want to check it out. Yeah, maybe that. But it's a learnable skill, and you can learn it so much faster than you'd ever thought possible.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and so get out there, and should they practice with places they're not interested in? Well,
definitely not. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Too many people try that, and it hurts a lot more to get ignored by companies you're not that into than by ones that you're really psyched about. And most people are going to ignore you. It's the cost of doing business in this market. But the good news is the people who get back to you within 3 business days probably are on your side. Probably are pretty excited to help you if they like you. Don't start with backups though. I've seen too many people lose their energy having conversations their heart wasn't into or getting ignored by people they didn't want to talk to anyway. So start with your dream companies. People that you reach out to who ignore you don't tell their peers not to talk to you. They have their own lives going on. It's that spotlight effect. We think people are paying way more attention to us than they are, and they're simply not. So if they ignore you, they're not telling anybody about it.
Okay, cool. Okay, that's a good info. And speaking of which, you touched on something about getting them on your side, right? And in your book, you talk about how to turn not just a contact into a colleague, but also a mentor. And can you just give me the elevator pitch of how that works? Because it's what do you mean stranger to mentor? How? What?
Yeah, I think it's its own art skill. Again, if you feel anxiety about this, people tell you should go find mentors, but they never tell you how. They give you tips, and you can't replicate tips. Like, you can't bake a cake from a list of tips on baking a cake. Like, you need a recipe. So to me, the way you build mentors is you get people to give you advice they feel attached to. And that means priming creativity so that when they give you advice, that's stuff that they think, yeah, no, this is what I would do. This will be really effective if you do this. And then you go do that thing, and then you go report back the results. Here's how I benefited from that advice you gave me. What additional advice do you have? This is a concept called the Ben Franklin effect. Ben Franklin, hundreds of years ago, identified the best way to deepen relationships was not to repay favors. It was to acknowledge their magnitude and ask for additional favors. The imbalance itself is what deepens intimacy, trust in a new relationship. So I couldn't disagree more with the conventional wisdom that you should send people that you talk to articles. That takes you time. It takes them time to read it, while low-key you're suggesting that they need to get smarter at their job. You're not a peer. You're not their peer. You don't want them to be an equal to you. You want them to be a mentor. You want them to fight for you and identify with your successes as, identify them as their own, like we do when we have a mentee. So, but get out of that mindset that you need to be worthy or provide something of value. What you're providing that's of value is a feeling of kindness, of goodness. Like, this person gets to feel great about helping someone. Maybe they didn't have anyone like them, a mentor growing up. Like, they get to give that to someone else, and that feels pretty great. They get to share all the knowledge they've acquired, and that feels pretty great.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say are the must-dos when you turn someone into a mentor figure? Like, what must you do to keep that faucet running?
If they give you advice, you've got to report back the benefits of that advice and ask for additional advice. That's kind of step one. You've got to send a thank you note after they've done anything for you, whether it's speak to you, anyone you speak to, you should get a thank you note. That goes without saying. But the request for a referral, you will need to request a referral at some point. To me, that should be a week after your thank you note from an informational meeting. But with mentors, you just really need to let them know how you've benefited from their advice. That's the most important thing. Also, if you're in the midst of a job search, you have to set a recurring monthly reminder on them. And just to check in, sure. Hey, you told me to do this thing. Here's how I'm better at it. What additional advice do you have? If they have it, repeat this the next month. If they don't, the check-in next month should be a little more social in nature. By now, if they have family or pets or travel plans. So I call this follow-up system the harvest cycle. Like, everything has a set of diagnostic rules. You can follow this exactly, even if I'm not there to teach it to you. Mm-hmm. It's meant to be a replacement for me, where you can bake the cake just by following the same exact instructions in the same order and get a predictable result.
Sure, absolutely. And the calendar is your friend. Correct?
Absolutely. Don't use spreadsheets. Too many people spreadsheets are better at highlighting what you forgot to do yesterday instead of teeing up what you're supposed to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
So calendars are built for that. Use them.
Absolutely. And, we're coming up on time, so I want to be mindful of that. I would ask, you've helped a lot of people find jobs and make their dreams come true. And so as you have helped them, I'm sure that, you've had to tell people to, buck up and, Yeah, so I guess where I'm going with this question is, what's your advice for people to stay positive, to keep pushing, to keep, not settling, I guess?
Yeah. I think a few perspectives help here. If you're feeling anxiety about job searching, this is not your fault. It's a failure of the system. For whatever reason, we require so many core courses in higher ed, but how to provide for yourself and your loved ones is not one of those required courses. And if it is a required course, it's taught through tips, which can't be replicated the same way a math or science function can be completed. An experiment, there are rules. There's a recipe that you follow to make that experiment happen. Nothing is higher stakes than being able to provide for yourself and your loved ones. There should be a scientific recipe to follow. So stay positive. There is a set of instructions for this. You don't have to figure this out on your own. Why is it reasonable for experts to expect you to curate their tips into a usable format when this is your first, second, or fifth job search? I've done thousands of these. I'm in a pretty good position to give you a set of instructions for it. Unfortunately, we just typically in this industry don't think in terms of instructions. So embrace a good set of instructions is the first thing you can do to stay positive. Sure. If it doesn't work for you, then blame the recipe. It's not your fault. It's not a reflection on you. If you follow the recipe exactly and it doesn't work for you, that's fine. Fire the recipe. But so this is not a reflection of success or failure on you. But if you're successful using the recipe, that is absolutely on you. You embraced a different way of doing things. You realized slamming your head into the online job posting wall was not healthy and not productive. And you had the executive function to try something different. So there is hope. There is a completely different approach that you may not have heard of that will help you be effective quickly, and it will give you life skills that you will use for the rest of your career. So stay focused on the positives of trying a different approach, and know that you can always walk away if it doesn't work for you, and blame the process. It's not a flaw in you. It's a flaw in the process.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. But the key is you got to not feel your way through the darkness, right?
Yeah, you're not alone. It's a set of instructions that thousands of people have followed. We just sold our 100,000th copy of the 2-Hour Job Search not too long ago. So that's pretty amazing. I have a LinkedIn group of 17,000 people, of people who've used these processes.
18,000, by the way. 18,
oh, yeah. 000. Oh, gosh, just changed. Where I answer questions for free. So you're not alone in this. There are a lot of people who've been down the road you've done before. This process works. It's the most humane way you can go about this really terrible task. And once you do it once, every job search after that becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the LinkedIn group. I actually have you've answered my questions, and
yes,
so I'm really grateful for that. And learning from the man himself is where it's at. So. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining. It's a fun conversation. I learned a bunch doing it too, so I'm happy to provide that service for free. I just wanted to put this help process that seems to help people in as many hands as possible. So I hope all of you out there listening, check out the book, check out the LinkedIn group. I look forward to answer any questions you have there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of questions, I'm sure you answer some questions in the job closer. I want to hear about the job closer. I mean, I have the job closer, but I want to hear you talk about the job closer and why.
The job closer is a passion project driven by the powerlessness I felt when people shared their good news from the 2-Hour Job Search with me. People consistently were getting interviews after thinking it was hopeless and there was nothing they could do and they weren't good enough. And they used it and they consistently got interviews in a pretty quick amount of time. And they said, so I got this interview coming up. What interview books do you recommend? And I'd say, I hate them all. They're all tips and there's no instructions. Sure. So I hated not having a book that I felt comfortable endorsing. But I was building recipes for answering, tell me about yourself, for answering why this company, why this job. Those 2 questions account for nearly half of interview decisions made, according to a Frieder Van Eycking and Raymark study. But also how to do resumes, a formula for writing cover letters that's fill in the blank. Where you're spending less time thinking, how am I going to present this? And more time just filling the blanks well. Keep life easy on yourself because you have more tasks in your job search than your parents did, but you don't have more time in your day. I'd argue you have less. So you have to save that time from elsewhere. So the job closer is a collection of smaller, standalone recipes to help you save time from all of the tasks before and after networking for that first interview, whether it's cover letters and resumes on the front end or answering common interview questions and negotiating and getting your manager on your side at promotion time on the back end. Check it out. If you like what we've talked about today, I think you'll really dig that one. It's a really concise, easy read. I read the audiobook. So if you ever want to hear this golden voice for 5 hours, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So I will have both links in the show notes for people to pick up. So they start at 2 hours, they end with the job closer, and then they send you a thank you note and a box of chocolates or something, right?
Excellent. I'd love that. And honestly, I've started recommending the job closer first. So it's just an easier starting point, proof of concept. But if you've made it to this point in the podcast, you kind of got the idea for what I'm about. So you're absolutely ready to tackle the 2-Hour Job Search first. Awesome. Flagship product.
Sounds great. All right. Very good. All right. Well, Steve, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate the conversation. I appreciate both of the books. I appreciate all the tips. The LinkedIn group, you're like the giving tree. But keep giving is what I'm trying to say. So what I like to do is end every podcast episode with a little bit of fun. So we're going to do a little bit of fun, kick some freestyle rapping, and then we'll be done. Here we go. Playing a beat. Can you hear that?
Oh, yeah.
All right, here we go. Yo, check. Yo. I'm here to tell you everything that's popping. Steve freaking Dalton, he is just walking you to your next job. That's what you gotta do. You gotta pick up the book. For 2 hours you be searching and you create the list. Basically, you come through and put it in a twist. I'm talking about the things that you just got. A whole bunch of dream companies running free. That's what you do. Come on through. And then you start doing a whole bunch of outreaching. He is just teaching the people right now. 6 points an email when I freestyle. That's what I'm saying. You just gotta understand that man right there shares a bunch of knowledge, whole bunch of things for the people in information interviews. Yo, what I'm just into, what I be dropping, a whole bunch of things. The dude come through and he gets you to build a whole bunch of trust by stepping out your comfort zone. That's what I'm saying. You will not be running home, you'll be stepping in a bigger version of yourself. And that's what I'm saying, and that's what's felt. The dude right there shares a bunch of recipes so you could cook all the time. That's what I'm saying. Look in your mind for the good questions that you need to freaking ask. And yo, you got a task. Turn a contact into a colleague. That's what I'm saying. Don't be stalling. You got to do that right now. You got to reach out and just build your network so you could come through and you could just find the thing that you have up in your mind. I'm talking about your dreams when I'm here up on the scene, and that's what I'm saying. And he is on your team. He is just hooking you up now, and that's what I'm saying. That is just wild. The dude right there, Steve, just coming with a bunch of love and a whole bunch of things that you freaking need. So what I see when I'm coming off the top nonstop, and that's what I'm saying. With the words that I drop, I spit off the top, and that's how I go. Job closer, 2-hour job search, and the flow. All right.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. All right. This has been a awesome experience. This is the highlight of my week, and I'm including missing work from the snowstorm. So
fantastic. Wins all around.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, Steve, you got to tell the people how they can find you on the interwebs.
Oh, man, I am all over LinkedIn. So come join me there. Just look me up, Steve Dalton on LinkedIn. You can also visit my websites. Contact the number 2 colleague.com is my corporate site for corporate workshops. And thejobcloser.com for information on my second book, and the 2hourjobsearch.com for information on my first book. There's also a form there. You can contact me directly on any of those websites. So I look forward to hearing from you on LinkedIn or through my website.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I'm just going to tell the people, after you get the help from my man, Steve Dalton, I'm going to tell you that the name Steve and also the name Dalton are great first names for children. You choose a name yours after him. So
fantastic.
All right, Steve, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
And been mine as well. Take care, everybody.
Indeed. All right, so that's the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a lot out of it. And I hope you take what you learned and implement it in your life. And of course, pick up the book, The 2-Hour Job Search, and also The Job Closer. If you're new here, don't forget to hit follow so you don't miss future episodes. And also, please rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and leave comments on Spotify as well. That helps out greatly in getting the word out and also getting more awesome guests in the future. Make sure to share this episode with anyone you know that is on the job search. And remember, there's great work out there for you somewhere. And if you haven't found it yet, you just got to keep looking. All right, that's it for now. This is Your One Life. I'm Kim Young Kim. I hope you have a great day, a great week. And until next time, peace.